So the inside scoop to college recruiting. Let's talk for a minute about this. Okay, for starters, just look at it as an adventure race. Like, I don't know if you used to watch that one eco challenge that Mark Burnett, the guy from Survivor, put on. But it's an adventure race. It's a multi-day, hundreds and hundreds of mile race, usually through like some really, really serious terrain. And in the race, it's really like, for the most part, it's not every team against every other team, because to be quite honest, it's such a long race. By the time that it gets down to it, the race is really you against you, or you against the elements, which really is you against you, because it's all back on you. But then the situation as it relates to like kind of the finish line, you might at the end, it comes down to you and like maybe one or two other people. And that's really like, that's the same thing as Division I, Division II, and even Division III college athletics. It comes down to like how well you prepared yourself, how healthy you kept yourself, how much you grew through the process, the way that you put yourself in a situation at the end to give yourself an opportunity to win. And then sometimes it just comes down to kind of who's got the most guts at the end. So long story short, we're going to talk about 7 things really quickly that massively impact your chances of being recruited. First things first, this is going to be funny. I've got some travel music on in my office to kind of set the mood, because it is really a journey, and that's what we talk about. It's and the joy and the happiness is in the journey. Unfortunately, for a lot of coaches, trainers, and parents, they get really stressed, and then the student athlete starts realizing this and they get really stressed. If you're doing the work, if you're not slacking, if you're not like, making excuses and not getting things done, then like that stress is just kind of make-believe. But the stress often comes from somewhere, and it comes from our our ability to recognize the fact that we're not doing everything we're supposed to do. Guilty. We've all done that. And some of us unfortunately get stuck in that loop of like what's comfortable. I can tell you, this is not a very comfortable process. If it was a comfortable process, then it wouldn't be 2% of Division I athletes. That's the stat. Like, so if you're going to go to Princeton and Harvard, they're like around 6%, percent like acceptance rate. Those are the top 2 schools, in the country, sometimes on the planet. So the thing is, if it's 6 to 7% to get in there, sometimes 8%, and it's only 2%, that's crazy. For some sports, it's 1% or less than 1%. Think about that. You're in a sport, and there's several of them, that it's 1%. You're 6 times more likely to get into Harvard. Think about that. That's kind of a crazy statistic. So anyways, the point is, and even Division III athletics, it's not necessarily simple to get to be on a team somewhere. So there's a process, and you got to go through the process, and that process weeds out a lot of people who are fakers. They're not people who are committed to actually putting their best foot forward, and they don't do what they need to do. And a lot of the people are very talented people, but talent is not what gets you to be successful at that level. Not talent alone. It's consistency, it's hard work, it's intelligence, it's understanding, like Darwin says, how to adapt to the situation best. That's who survives in the end. It's not survival of the fittest, it's survival of the one who's most able to adapt, learn from the situation, and then employ what they've learned. So that's a really important thing to know. Now, let's jump right into the 7 things I want to talk about today. And then tomorrow we'll have the boot camp getting started and stuff like that, for those of you who are doing it. This will kind of prime the pump a little bit to get to thinking about stuff. 1, social footprint. People have heard about carbon footprints, and they talk about like global warming and stuff like that, and how much of an impact we leave behind ourselves based on like, whether or not like how much fuel we're putting in the car, or what foods we're eating. Beef has a much bigger footprint on the environment than broccoli does, for instance. And broccoli from, another country has a bigger footprint than broccoli from your backyard. So think about that social footprint for a second. So we all have some sort of connections in social media. Now, it might not be, maybe the student athlete doesn't have a connection, but directly, but usually their parents are on there, or a trainer's on there, or a coach is on there, or a high school program's on there, or if you're in New York, your conference might be on there, or your section, or your region, or your county, depending on what state you're in. Sometimes the way or the attitude that comes from the state or the conference or the county or the region or the section or the, or that individual high school, that takes on a kind of persona. So that's a representation, that's a footprint for a coach to look at. And if you're a parent and you have like some really, really outspoken ideas on there, that can hurt your student athlete. That's a true story. I've seen it happen several times. Same thing with a trainer, same thing with a coach. Same thing with, abrasive personalities coming out of a travel program or a high school program. They're not just buying on to interact with the student athlete, they're buying on for everything that the student athlete brings to the table. Now, if the student athlete has a social media presence themselves, that can be very helpful if it's obviously going to be helpful. Also, they're going to maybe look at like those friends that you communicate with the most, because they're going to pop up in your feed the most. They're going to also see those things. And are the people that you interact with the most partiers? Are they people that are getting in trouble? Are they people who are also like looking to go to your level? Are you used to surrounding yourself with people who are at a lower level as far as like athletics go or academics, or are they like up at your level? So they're going to look for that type of stuff. The next thing is communication tracking. 2, communication tracking. You need to communicate with college coaches, obviously, and so that tracking is essential, and making sure that you have it in a trusted space that you can then lean back on and communicate to like maybe other travel coaches or sometimes your high school coach, let them know who you're talking with sometimes, so that they're all on the same page. You need to have a lot of important information there. You need to have the time of discussions, what was discussed, was there a call to action for you or for the coach, and how and when are you going to follow up? What are the actionable items in there? Do you have video availability? Meaning, and is it easily accessible for somebody else? So is there a full-length video of you playing in a game somewhere? Do you have a highlight reel? Do you have like individual like little tiny mini highlights that you can send out kind of just to refresh people's memory as to who you are? Are you sharing some of that stuff on social media in like a friendly, playful way? And these things are really important. 3, do you have a wow factor? Meaning size, speed, skill, strength, stamina. A lot of times you might have multiple things. Do you have something that people are like, wow, it has to be relevant. This is important. It has to be relevant. Okay. If you're horseback riding, you're in equestrian or something, and you've got like this massive speed. He or she ran, the 40 in 4.5. I don't know how that applies to equestrian. It's not relevant. Okay, so if you're in volleyball or basketball and you've got a massive vertical, or you've got an incredible squat, okay, awesome. There's a window of opportunity you just created. So that's number 3. That was number 4 actually. Number 5, off the field stats, your SAT, your GPA, what you volunteered for. Have you done things like within your sport? Have you done things within your community? What kind of person do you represent? How do you bring that to the table? 6, elevator pitch me. Okay, you got 5 minutes, you got 10 minutes, you got 15 minutes, whatever it is. Practice getting down what your rap is. Watch some sales videos, watch some sales movies, watch some sales highlights on YouTube. You have to be a marketer and a salesperson for yourself. You have to be able to communicate to other people what you bring to the table and why they should be interested in what you have to offer. You have to have that incredible offer, that offer that says, this is who I am, this is what I stand for, this is how I fit with your program, this is what I can do for you. Boom, that has to be like, you have to have that down. Then you need, this is 7, you need to have your frequently asked question sheet in front of you, so that all the questions that most coaches are going to ask you, you have them down pat. You have to write them down. Then you need a coach, a school, and or a team recon sheet, and that is all the vital statistics that you need to know about somebody in case they get on the phone with you, and then the coach is asking you things that like you need to know information about them. That's that recon sheet. You need to have that. Good luck.